there could be too much inflation. Is it working? Yes. So, Massachusetts did that. Who can vote in Massachusetts? Did we get to that?
They had to have money. They had to own land.
Yeah, they had property requirement. So we did say limited suffrage in here.
Yes, that is about where we stopped.
And
limited currency.
the Articles of Confederation didn't have what part of their government to enforce or interpret laws. The what? Well, whoever's going to be in charge of the military. So who is that? Yeah, the executive didn't have that. A real hole. And also, what couldn't the Articles regulate or control that allowed, or that would have New York and Connecticut fighting? Interstate commerce. Interstate commerce. Commerce means trade. We try to say commerce because not only that implies more than just simply trade, but also it's in the Constitution that way. And so we got Shays Rebellion. We got, what? Land Act would survey the land, set up townships and sections. Land Ordinance of 1785 and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 said what about states created north of the Ohio River? Actually, territories created there.
No slave codes.
Yeah, not no slavery, no slave codes. But there can't be slavery without slave codes. Yeah.
There needs to be like 60,000 people for consider the state.
Once they get 60,000, they can apply to Congress to become a state. So like Montana had it for a few years. Heck, Utah had 60,000 for almost 30 years. But they wouldn't let them become a state because the big issue was polygamy. That was a big issue. And so when the Mormons got rid of polygamy, they allowed Utah to become a state in 1990. So it still has to go to Congress. That's, So, now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, we got limited suffrage. We got what else?
Got to
Deflation. Is that where we quit? Yeah, limited the currency. We have deflation. Clearly, who runs the government of Massachusetts? Who's that? We just said Maggie? And the creditors run it. If you look at policy, it's not accidental. Things don't happen in a vacuum. You know who controls government by what kind of laws they pass. That's why people give campaign contributions. They don't do it because they want the political system to thrive. No, they want something in return. So you know who controls it. One of the best ways is you know if they want inflation or deflation. If you have policies by the national government that do everything they can to keep inflation low, creditors, big banks control the government. What's our policy today? Are we inflationary or more deflationary? Did you say D? Or D? We have almost no inflation now, and the policy is to keep inflation below 2%. 2% is really low inflation. So we have a policy that actually tries to keep wages down, but also helps bankers by the issue of deflation. Who does that? We said, who does it? You said it yesterday. The Federal Reserve, yeah. They have a 2% target. To get wages up, they should probably be 4%. You've never seen 4% in your life inflation. I've seen 20%. And then right after World War, right after World War I, 100%. So, Shays Rebellion. What's going on in Rhode Island? I know exactly what you're thinking. What about Rhode Island? We forgot about Rhode Island. Rhode Island, right next door to Massachusetts, and they are printing money like mad. They have inflationary programs. They want to inflate the currency, meaning drop the value of it. Inflate. They're printing money. Now, there's problems with both of these policies, so nothing is perfect on this one, but just take a wild guess. Who can vote in Rhode Island? Who? Say it again. Who said it? Someone's, Mark. anyone, well, not quite anyone, but they really had virtually no property requirements. Almost all men could vote in Rhode Island. Almost all men. They had almost universal white male suffrage. You see a connection there? Debtors make up the majority of the population. They want policies to help them. When they have the vote, they can vote for people who do that for them. Massachusetts, creditors control that. You have a limited franchise. So, speaking of suffrage, meaning how many people vote, or for that matter, how easy it is to vote, who do you suppose wants to make it difficult to vote? Creditors. Yes. Because they know if more people have power, laws will be passed, regulations will be done that will help debtors. And I think, okay, that's 1786, big deal. It goes on to this day. To this day, it's an issue. There is a constant effort, because every state has their own laws on voting and when they vote. A constant fight between making it easier to vote and making it more difficult to vote. And it's the same dynamic as then. It's right here in this state. Montana for years made it really difficult to register to vote. Now Montana is really easy to register to vote. And there are people that desperately want to make it more difficult again to keep people from voting. It's a big issue in other states. Well, heck, it just went to the courts. And 4 states had their election laws thrown out by the federal courts because they were discriminating against certain people to keep them from voting. The best known was North Carolina. North Carolina in 2010 got a Republican majority in their House and the Senate. First time it's happened in North Carolina for a really long time. And we know this, the court knows this because there are emails when they talked about this. And they tried to make laws, registration, when people could vote, and also voter IDs that were specifically designed to keep African Americans from voting. So they found there's certain types of IDs that more whites had, so those are fine. You don't have to worry about them. But the ones that African Americans did not have, those were required to vote. This came out in court and had to throw out all their laws. This is a big deal. Why? Because 90% of African Americans in North Carolina voted for the Democratic Party. And so immediately when that happened, they passed a series of laws that once they had this restriction in for one election, it took almost no time at all for them to change the rules for funding education. And what do you suppose happened? Schools in predominantly African American areas closed or almost defunded and replaced with what's called charter schools. Almost overnight. Boom. Overnight. Charter schools, people make a lot of money out of those. That's like a big cash cow. Happened right there. Federal court said this is blatantly discriminating, violating the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It's a big deal. Yeah. They usually call them a voter ID law. But basically what it is they set up a system where you have to have a certain type of ID. And a lot of people don't have like driver's license in North Carolina. And so they made sure that those people who didn't have, or you had to have a driver's license to vote. And that was a big thing. But they also said they changed, people could vote early, and Indians could vote early if they couldn't vote on election day. They took away those days. And those were all completely adhered to, what the courts found to try to keep out. So you think, that doesn't happen today. Happens all the time. Happens all the time. Montana used to be infamous for trying to keep American Indians from voting. Make it very difficult for them to vote. And so, when I say that, you think, oh, it was a long time ago. It's obviously not exactly the same, but that dynamic still exists. All right, so back to this. That's Rhode Island. This, and combination of not only what's happened in Massachusetts, but they knew what's happening in Rhode Island. That is when you get in 1786, Shays Rebellion. I know we already put it once before, but that's where the rebellion began. And what really happened was, it wasn't like this organized assault. And you're getting this. It wasn't like an organized assault. What it was, they marched on what course? To get their friends out and also free them from what kind of prison? Those debtors' prisons. They stormed them and they shut them down and said, this is unfair. We can't have this because the system is rigged and we demand our voice in government. So it wasn't like they wanted to overthrow and create anarchy. They wanted a voice in the system. The state, there's no police force yet, and there's no federal army to put down revolts. So they sent the militia. But the militia is made up of what type of people? Who? Farmers who are always in what? They're debtors too, and they join the rebellion. This happens a number of times. This may be the most famous, actually no, the most famous was during the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. They all joined. We're with you. And it's happened in other countries too. The merchants in Boston totally panicked. They're coming for us. And not only that, New York, Philadelphia, and the big plantation owning elite in Virginia and in the South. When they heard about this, they're terrified. The only thing that saved them was the winter hit. And during the winter of 1786 and 1787, the army scattered. And here's the big thing. Merchants in Boston, with also money from Philadelphia and New York, the merchants there, bought off a militia army of the urban poor to go fight the rural poor. Now you might say they have something in common, but think about it today. There's a big difference between urban and rural. I know what you're thinking. We live in Helena, this major cosmopolitan center, right? But it's a lot different here in Montana than compared to the bigger cities, and just go to Seattle, or for that matter, New York City. And people vote differently here and think differently. And there's a big fight, and there's kind of this, it's been going on forever. And that's how they put the rebellion down. With money and using urban poor to fight rural poor. Everyone got that? The rebellion was put down. But the inability of the federal government to do something as basic as stopping an internal insurrection convinced those who saw all the other problems, we need to change. Alexander Hamilton had already proposed, because he was part of that mob that would go to the the Confederation Congress. We need some kind of convention. Well, that would happen because of Shays Rebellion. So everyone got that? Shays Rebellion led directly to the Constitution. That's why arguably the most important rebellion in American history. I don't know, Bacon's Rebellion, right there. That is where we get the Constitutional Convention. (1787), meeting in Philadelphia, Independence Hall, pretty important building. And once they got there, the majority of people who came from the various states decided we need to throw out the Articles. We need to throw out the Articles and replace it with a new government, a new written form of government that everybody called a constitution. But once they did that, a significant number of people left. And when that happened, there are only 55 members left. The entire New York delegation left. They were mad. Alexander Hamilton wanted to stay, but he's part of the New York delegation. He left, would come back and say, we need a king, and then left again. We'll come back to Hamilton. And they met in secret. Why in secret? Why in secret? Partially, and this is what they said, this sounds noble. Special interest can influence us. We want to be impartial. Yeah, there's an element they want to be impartial, but let's get to the real reason. Think about it. 55 people in this context, or in this time, 55 men. They get together to throw out the old government and replace it with a government of their making that will benefit them. What do we call this? It could be a rebellion. What's another word? What's a legal term? It's a crime committed by more than one person, so it's a conspiracy to commit treason. So you're right. This is a rebellion, but a conspiracy's the name. That's a crime committed by two people. Then you have to say what the crime is. Are they traitors? It's point of view, isn't it? That's still the government of the United States. So it's kind of weird to think about the government of the United States today written by traitors. But remember, the Declaration of Independence was written by a bunch of smugglers and slaveholders.
Who were also traitors.
Who were all betraying their country. History can be complex sometimes. We have to make judgments. It's in the eye of the beholder. Well, they met, and immediately the big problem, slavery. What do we do about slavery? What do they do? What they always do with the big issues. We'll talk about that at the end. Let's worry about slavery now, because this might blow the whole thing up. So, they knew, once again, slavery will destroy us. Slavery will destroy us. So the next big thing, the country is going to be a republic. It was technically a republic in the Articles. A republic is government by representation. But how many representatives? The Articles said one representative per state. Big states were furious about that. So big states wanted representation by population. Small states want to continue that one state, one or equal representation. Different plans would eventually coalesce around two. So let's do one really quick for the Belgians. The Virginia Plan. This is the big state plan. It was written by James Madison. Madison, a plantation owner. He was ill for most of his early life. Actually, he was always kind of a little sickly, never really recovered. And so he didn't really participate in the Revolutionary War, but very well read, intelligent. In many ways, James.
Yeah, I know that.
The father of the Constitution in many ways. His fingerprints are on all parts of it. And that's why that Federalist number 10 that I assigned, he's defending his baby. Don't forget that. This is mine. He also wrote the Bill of Rights. Well, Madison's will have a bicameral, or two-house. Not one like the Articles. And then the two houses will be divided up into a lower house that will be chosen by voters, but remember, they all have property requirements, and an upper house. The upper house will be chosen by the lower house. Both of them will be by population. The bigger your state, the more members of the lower house and the upper house you have. And they both must agree on a bill before it becomes a law. Did everyone catch that? Both must agree. So it's really hard for a bill to become a law. They have to agree. And lastly, the lower house will also choose an executive. So do you get this? Madison's form of government was to do everything it can to get power out of people's hands, the mob. They wanted as limited of any sense of a democratic republic as possible. The only one that's impacted by the voters, the lower house. So what they did is they put layers between all the decision making and you, the unwashed masses, right? The mob. And if only property owners could vote, you have the elite. And they would pick the elite would pick the elite of the elite, who would pick the elite of the elite of the elite. And then finally, The elite of the elite of the elite of the elite. Tomorrow, the small state plan will finish Constitution. We can't go into great detail about it, but I want to get the historical parts. If you have a problem with the test, come talk to me. But once again, like I said, overall, it was good. And even people who struggle with some part for whatever reason, I saw good things. So we're okay. Who? Yeah, John Locke actually. John Locke did both his writing on 1690. I can't remember the exact date, but he died. I want to say but he was Locke. Even though he was wrong at a lot of things, he just. Let's worry about this later. Let's get this.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna for Christmas. I'm looking at a big flag of USSR.
I'll take it.
Oh wait. It's on the plane.
Study, you're not used to it.
No.
We'll get that. We'll get how much you do. Yeah. So I know you're gonna look at all this time. Good answer. Yeah, what the heck is this? Same deal. You especially here. We need this. Yeah, you can just combine two. You have two separate ones. Redo these two. And also do the yeah. On your own, to be after your golf.
So -2 wasn't minus a whole lot.
No, -2 wasn't bad. But now, like I told you, that's the first time we do those kind of essays. Next time I'll demand more, right?
Yeah.
I like your sense of priorities. English doesn't matter. This class matters. You're gonna go far. See you tomorrow.
To be fair.
You stole it. Oh no, because you. Where did you write this?
On like the margin, in the margins of the
No, I mean, where did you write this? In what class?
your class.
You did in mine? Megan, not again.
There was a young lady last year sitting over there with fairly long dark hair.